Please welcome on stage Dr. Vishal Sikka.
Thank you, Sandeep. Good morning. I hope all of you are feeling unlimited. Oh, that is a word, unlimited. Some things, it is just too early in the morning for, so. Can we get the slide up, please? We hear a lot about AI these days. Every day, something or the other about AI is in the news. I was talking to someone yesterday about my own experiences with AI and started very, very early, and my entire graduate education was in AI. And so it is somewhat surreal for me to see all the noise. The second wave of AlphaGo with the best Go player in China is going on right now. I actually didn't catch up on what happened on day 2. On day 1, AlphaGo won, and it has become somewhat surreal. And so instead of trying to add more to the noise, I am hopeful that these 2 days are going to help us get some more substance into this discussion around what AI can mean for us, and really how the times that we are living in, the times that we are emerging into, are far more about our humanity, our human futures. And I say human in more ways than one there, obviously. So let me add my welcome to Confluence. We are living in times where ideas seem to be at odds with each other. Every day in the news, we hear about the difficulties, the challenges that we all face as a humanity. This morning, there was some very interesting coverage of the President's visit to the Vatican. The thing about ideas, especially ideas, there's sort of a sense of intolerance around ideas and ideas being at odds with each other, is that ideas cannot possibly be at odds with each other. Because as Alan Kay once reminded us, ideas are actually made of light. Ideas are not matter. I certainly don't have to be like matter. They don't have to be things that collide with each other. There's a beautiful picture here of these colors. In fact, 2 completely opposite ideas coming together can still coexist. Ideas can create a great synthesis, different points of view. So when we think about Confluence, my wish for these 2 days is that it is a confluence of ideas. It is a confluence of different backgrounds, confluence of different business areas, different industries that we come from, a confluence of different backgrounds and perspectives that we come from, different geographies that we come from, a confluence of our humanity and the systems that we create, of AI and people. And such a confluence, I believe, is something that is going to enrich all of us, that is going to help us all be better for it. I want to talk about 3 things, just to sort of set the stage for what these times of AI and what our human future in these times of AI is really all about. I want to talk about what is going on in the world around us. And everywhere, every time I do a speech, I make a presentation 2-3 times a month, people generally ask me what is going on. And so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what that means for us, both what we have been doing at Infosys in terms of our work, and give you an update on our own strategy and its execution, but also about what is going on can mean for all of us. And then from there derive some inferences around what that could mean, what benefits we could derive, and so forth. So, it is difficult to capture what is going on in a few minutes, but I'll try to do that. Sandeep mentioned the bicycle, and it's a great metaphor for amplifying our ability with technology. It's actually a far better amplifier for us than, for example, a car. It doesn't use any energy, it uses our own energy. It uses our energy much more effectively to transport ourselves. It becomes a part of us. But also when you think about a bicycle, the learning to ride a bike is one of the great experiences of our childhood. It is not easy. It is not easy. Under the guise of user centricity and user experience, these days we tend to think of great user experience as being a substitute for easy. Learning to ride a bike is not easy. People put training wheels on them, and that is the worst thing you can do to a bike. Because you can study that putting training wheels on bikes actually makes it more difficult for us to learn to ride the bike, because the point of riding the bike is to learn to balance it, to learn to bend into the turn, and when to slow down and when to speed up and things like this. And the training wheels impede that, precisely that which it means to learn to ride a bike. So that act of having a barrier, a threshold that we have to cross in order to amplify our ability is something extraordinary about what it means to learn to ride a bicycle. If you look at what is going on, we are living in a time where that experience of connecting us, of amplifying us, of enabling us to do more is becoming more and more connected, more and more pervasive. I have a few examples here. An example of new services, there is a car, this is a car from Toyota, the new connected car. They've been working with the various other companies in their ecosystem to completely reimagine what it means to be inside a car for a person and what the car itself is. The entire car is far more now a computer in the shape of a car than a car with some software inside it. The entire experience of being inside, the interfaces, the autonomous driving, as well as the connectivity, where every single aspect of what we do is completely measured, is completely available in the cloud. Toyota has done a large partnership with NTT to connect massive amounts of data that the car generates to the cloud and so forth. And you think about the Tesla and Uber and Lyft and these companies. Every aspect of our experience inside the car is connected. It's connected in more ways than one, far more so than it used to be in the old taxi cabs. And that the computing, the digitization of our experience is making its way into the physical world, such as cars, but it is also being reimagined digitally as well. On the left-hand side, especially in virtual reality, there is a tremendous amount of very exciting work going on. That is a picture of Nvidia's Holodeck. It's a high-definition VR collaborative environment where people can work around, sit together and be around an artifact, like in this case a car, and engineer together, work together from large distances. In our own work that we do together, these technologies will have a profound impact on how teams come together. Outside, you will see some great examples of how new VR and AR experiences can connect life cycles of products. There is a beautiful engine, a 1/4 size replica of one of the new Boeing engines that is out there. That engine, of course, is manufactured in a completely new kind of a way, but the entire life cycle of the engine is now connected. And it is possible for not only the support people, but also the design engineers to actually have an interaction with an engine throughout its entire life cycle. You can get rid of the notion of a manual. You can completely reimagine and integrate with a particular machine, with a particular instance of a machine across its entire life cycle. And we have a great demonstration outside that Kevin has done of that we have done together with GE. In fact, if you think about the very notion of a manual, it is more than 100 years old. There is no need for manuals anymore. There is no reason for us to have manuals in today's times. In fact, when you think about why does the manual even exist, it exists because of a fundamental inefficiency in our ability to interact with individual products. If you think of a complex product like an elevator or an engine, it is the reason we need manuals is to categorize the products for our own convenience, not because, but in digital times, in connected times, you can actually have a specific interaction with one particular engine as it goes through its life cycle. And engines live for decades, and they go through massive amounts of change over the course of that life cycle. And having a manual for a particular category of an engine, a particular class of an engine, actually makes no sense when you can have a live conversation with a particular engine. And so connectedness is changing the way we interact with reality, not only with content that is in the digital realm, but even with the physical reality around us. And of course, that can change the experience of the people in very fundamental ways. And over here, I have an example, a new company in England that just got funded. It's called FarmDrop, and it is a company that connects people directly to farms. The new farm-to-table movement, where you get food from farms. And you can order something, spinach or potatoes or eggs or meat or what have you, directly from a farm, go and pick it up, arrange for some sharing service to deliver it to you. They even have small, highly agile warehouses where they can temporarily store things for some as a buffering mechanism. But it is a complete disintermediation of a huge value chain by connecting and bringing you in direct contact with local farms. So a pervasive digitization of the world around us is leading to completely new kinds of experiences and new kinds of connectedness. And this is one part of what is going on. This is the end-user-oriented part of what is going on. When we think about the feasibility, the engineering of what is going on, it is very clear that underneath this great digital transformation, what is fueling this is the unprecedented infrastructure evolution, the digital infrastructure evolution. We are nearing the end of May of 2017. In 2 months, in July, it will be 52 years since Moore's Law. And I have written Moore's laws here, even though Moore, of course, wrote one paper, because I believe that there are several Moore's laws, not one. This is about exponential improvement in price performance, and that happens in pretty much any aspect of digital infrastructure. I think Moore's law and the implementation of Moore's law is one of the great achievements of humanity. For the first 40 or so years of Moore's law, we in fact did better than what Moore predicted. Moore had predicted doubling every 2 years. I think in the first 40, 45 years of Moore's law, the engineers at Intel and other companies had figured out engineering achievements to deliver the doubling at around 18 months, not even 2 years. It has slowed down now because manufacturing technology is starting to reach its limit. It is becoming incredibly sophisticated and expensive. Here I have up here, that second picture is the new 7 nanometer wafer from TSMC. This is one of the first wafers that were produced on the 7 nanometer process. Back in 1989, I was a summer intern at Intel in the artificial intelligence lab that Intel had. Gene Myron used to have an AI lab. I did some really, over that 3-month summer, I did a piece of work that is one of the things that I am the most proud of in my life. And at the time, we were working on the micron process. Intel had just launched the sub-micron process. A micron is 1,000 nanometers. It's a micrometer. Today we are at 7 nanometers. So to go from a 1,000 nanometer process to a 7 nanometer process in 27 years, 26 years, that's an incredible achievement. The next phase after this, it will probably go down to 4 nanometers over the next 7 or 8 years. At 4 nanometers, you are basically at the limit of current manufacturing, CMOS manufacturing for silicon. That means, but of course, a silicon atom itself is about half a nanometer in diameter. So at 4 nanometers, you are at the width of 8 silicon atoms. So you cannot go much further than that. So people say that Moore's law is ending, but of course it is not ending. It is, we still have 8 more years. That means 2 to 3 more cycles of Moore's law. That means we can already sitting here today predict that in the next 7 to 8 years, computing is going to be 8 times more powerful, cheaper than it is today. I was talking to someone yesterday about the farm of machines at Sun that rendered the movie Toy Story in 1995, and how the Samsung Galaxy 7 has twice the power of that entire farm of computers. It was a room full of computers. The human brain is wired in a way that we don't comprehend exponential curves very nicely. And Moore's law has, of course, had 50 cycles, or over 52 years, roughly 25 cycles of improvement. So that is doubling 25 times over and over. It is, even though people are now starting to understand, I find that business types, CEOs, generally now understand what Moore's law is and that computing is improving exponentially in this way. But we still don't comprehend what it really means. That idea that 7 years from now, this is going to be 8 times more powerful is something that we still don't quite have a grasp on. The impact of all of this, of course, is extraordinary. On the left is a picture of one of the AWS data centers. That there are hundreds of these data centers that AWS has around the world, Amazon Web Services. This one has between 50 and 75,000 servers. Collectively, AWS, of course, has millions of servers. And it's amazing. I was talking to Andy about the size of AWS, and he and I started working together 11 years ago when AWS had just started. And I had done, back then I was at SAP, and we had done a first prototype of running an SAP system on the Amazon cloud, and that had helped give Andy and his team the confidence that there was a strong enterprise case for AWS. And we were just talking the other day about what AWS's size. And just to get a sense of AWS's size, it started off as an excess capacity from Amazon.com's own computing. It is now more than a $10 billion business in its own right. And every single day, AWS adds more computing, network, and storage capacity than the entire Amazon.com from 2009 in one day. So it is hundreds of times bigger than the infrastructure that is underneath the main Amazon website, which itself is, of course, as you know, one of the world's biggest computing communities. So it's staggering the amount of infrastructure that it is possible for us to make available to us. And yet, whenever I think about lowering the cost of computing or lowering the cost of our IT landscape, I see that idea in a very fundamental way misses the point of what the computing revolution is all about. This year, of course, when you start to think about post-2025 and what is going to happen to computing, this is, in AI technology, these days is a lot of it is about neural networks and large-scale neural networks of various sorts. And training neural networks and then executing them after they have been trained requires computing of a different sort of forms. And so over the last few years, the GPU technology has become extremely popular. And even the GPUs are not efficient enough to run many of these new kinds of neural networks. So Google has made their own processor. This is called the TPU2 processor. They launched it last week here in San Francisco. The TPU processor is something like 30 times more efficient than a GPU in executing TensorFlow libraries and AI libraries. So you can think of this as kinds of an architecture that will take us beyond Moore's law. Up there, that is a picture of Jen Hazler. Jennifer Hazler is a professor at Georgia Tech, and she's holding a neuromorphic board. It's a board about that size, and one of the biggest impediments now in data center efficiency is power. Power consumption, even though power consumption per unit in infrastructure has gone up by 3 orders of magnitude, we're about 1,000 times better at power efficiency now than we used to be in the mainframe times. And nonetheless, when you think about the post-current Moore's law world, we will need to deal with power. So she and her team have been working on these neuromorphic boards, and these are 8 orders of magnitude more power efficient. 8 orders of magnitude is 100 million times more powerful in terms of power consumption, meaning they use less power. And that gets to the level of our own brain's consumption of power. When you think about 2,000 calories that we eat in a day and how that powers the computing infrastructure that we have up here, the kind of power consumption that you need is not going to work with the current generation hardware. The point of all of this that I'm trying to make, ladies and gentlemen, is that Moore's law, the current Moore's law will live for 8 more years, and engineers like Jen have figured out ways to make it continue well beyond that. Which means that for the rest of our lives, we will see a doubling in price performance of computing. And so the question we have to ask ourselves is, what does that mean for us? What are we doing as a result of that knowledge? What are you doing as a result of your knowledge that 5 years from now, you will be able to procure the same computing, 6 times more powerful than it is today or cheaper? And generally, whenever I see long-term plans that companies make, I never see this kind of an assumption. I routinely see 7-year RFPs, 5-year RFPs, and they talk about maintaining things for the next 7 years, but they never make the assumption, almost never, less than 1% of the time, that we know already that in 2024, when this particular project is going to end, computing is going to be 8 times more powerful. So, and the other dimension, of course, of this computing is the pills that I have up there. There is a complete computer on top of that pill. That's a regularly sized medicine, kinds of medicines that we eat. Of course, one of the problems in medicines is the fact that we don't have a good handle on compliance. We don't know when diabetics or people with long-term chronic disease take their necessary medicines. So, of course, putting an edible sensor inside the pill is a great example, is a great way to keep track of when people take their medicines and so forth, and other measurements, the acidity in the blood or in the stomach, or the temperature of the body or the humidity in there, or who knows what the computers want to measure when they go inside there. So miniaturization, the smallness of computing, is the other dimension of it. This is a computer that's about a cubic millimeter in size that is edible, that is possible to attach to an individual pill. And soon, this effect of Moore's law is also going to be that it is going to become incredibly cheap and incredibly small and incredibly easy for us to attach a computer to every pill, to every leaf of every tree, to bury it by the bucket in the concrete that we drive on, and so on and so forth. And this incredible advance in computing, together with the extraordinary improvements in user experience and connectedness, are making it possible, obviously, for our businesses to become completely disrupted, easier than ever. It is becoming, Tesla recently became more valuable as a company than pretty much every, except for a handful, pretty much every automobile company. The we look at disruption in industries, and the two things that I talked about earlier are enabling that. And that complete disintermediation, that complete elimination of many kinds of prior work or automation of it for that needs to remain, or improvement of the efficiency of it, is creating dramatic new opportunities. And what is going on there? I have tried to capture this in a simple picture. Some of you may have seen a variant of this before, that in the physical world, we have inefficiency. Between production and consumption, there are many, many layers. And every layer, every intermediary feels the need to add its own value, feels the need to add its own bells and whistles, feels the need to add its own piece of the pie in that value chain. Sometimes we are that intermediary. And the result of that, if you think about it objectively, is inefficiency. It is opacity in understanding demand, in understanding consumption, in understanding feedback, in understanding reactions, in understanding price and price efficiency and price relevance. And of course, in the digitally connected world that is fueled by the exponential improvements in price performance of computing, there is no such thing. There is complete disintermediation. That's the world of bits. There is a direct consumption, the connection between production and consumption. I mentioned the example of farm drop, the direct connection to the farmers. We talked about bicycles earlier. When you drive around Beijing these days or Shanghai, you see these bicycles. There are yellow ones, orange ones, and blue ones. One of these companies, these are all bike sharing companies. You can go wave your smartphone at a bike and take it for a ride, drop it wherever, and then somebody else takes it and so forth. There are hundreds of thousands of these bikes littered around Beijing and Shanghai and other Chinese cities. The first one of these was a company that for a 99 RMB deposit, it's about $16. You could put the deposit in your Alibaba account or on your Weibo or WeChat account, and you pick up the bike and you go. And one of their business models was that they started to take the deposits and essentially became a bank, because millions of consumers put their 99 RMB deposit in there, and this was money that was available to them. And of course, then to disrupt them, another bike sharing company showed up, and because these guys had access to the purchasing history of consumers based on their digital lives, they actually had no deposits. They chose to afford to take the risk of maybe 5% of the people will do bad things to the bike or get into accidents and stuff like that. And so there is actually, without any deposit, you can go and pick up the bike and drive it somewhere and so forth. So we live in a time where while all these opportunities are available to us, they're also available to our competitors, and they're also available to upstarts who have absolutely no qualms about coming into our industries and disrupting the hell out of them. So this is my, in a nutshell, characterization of what is going on. So what are we to do in the face of this kind of change, this kind of opportunity? Especially if we are traditional businesses with a long history. And my sense of that is that there is a very straightforward strategy that applies to all of us. This is, of course, the strategy that Infosys has been following, but it is a strategy that applies to everybody. Arthur Koestler wrote about this in 1964 in a beautiful book called The Act of Creation, where he thought about what it meant to be creative, what it meant to create things, to make new things happen. And he talked about this idea that anytime we do something new, anytime we create something, we innovate, there are two different planes. There is the plane of what we have known, the plane of where we have been, and innovating in that plane, and he called it the pink plane. And then there is the disruptive plane, which is some piece of insight when we try to walk around in the pink plane and try to see how we can improve things, and bam, an idea hits us and takes us out of the realm of what we have known, unlimits us in some sense, if you will, and takes us into a different plane. something unprecedented, the blue plane, something that we have no vocabulary for, something that is completely new to us, something that we did not do before. And so in that dual, and it's a very important point that these two planes are not inconsistent. They are self-consistent, but they are habitually different. What does that mean? The two frames obviously are consistent to each other because we can have the renew and the new coexist inside one organization. These people don't kill each other. But the habits of these two kinds of innovations are very different. Because the habits of the world where we have been are known to us. We have vocabulary for it. We can talk about 30% improvement in this, or 10% cuts in that, or 50% increase in that. We don't have any such vocabulary for the new stuff because nobody knows what it is. It is something that we have never done before. And inevitably our temptation is to characterize that in terms of where we have been. And actually that is wrong. So this duality of simultaneously executing the renew of what we have known and the new that we have never done before is where true innovation lies. And it does not mean that in your company there is a new department and there is a renew department. Every one of us can do both at the same time. Every unit, every organization, every team, in fact every individual can be carrying out simultaneously the renewal of all the things that they used to do before and new things that they never did before. But it is the importance of understanding how these two form themselves. And one of the most important things which people don't realize, even the ones that carry out this renewal, and in fact, a lot of the companies that are going through transformation these days have understood this point. And if you look at their reports, their quarterly reports, their annual reports, you will see this, that they talk about the fact that there is the declining business and they measure that and they improve the efficiency on that declining business faster than the decline in the business, and then they have the new businesses that are growing faster. Indra from Pepsi, she has a characterization of new products, and she reports the revenues from products that are less than 2 years old or less than 1 year old and so forth. But inevitably, the foundation of the renew plus new is the foundation of culture. And what does that mean? And that is, what that means is the fabric that binds together who we are. What is it that we do? I once spoke to Mohit, and I went to see a very distinguished financial organization in the Midwest. It's been around for 150 years. And we asked the chairman, what is it that has been common in your company for the last 150 years? And he says, we believe in providing financial security to our customers. And if you think about providing financial security to our customers, there is no technology there. It is something that was as relevant 100 years ago as it is today. It might be that you use blockchain and Bitcoin and virtual reality and robo-advisors and so forth to provide that financial security. Maybe 100 years ago, it was about something completely different, and people showing up in horse carriages to your house with, reports of what was going on from newspapers around the world or what have you. But what is it that is timeless, that helps us be true to who we are, that binds us? And when you think about this, it ends up inevitably being about culture, about our purpose, about learning, and things of this nature. So let me give you a quick update on where we have been on this journey. Renew in our world is about renewing everything that we do, and to renew that continuously. By the way, in case you have been wondering, that beautiful video that is playing as I speak on the right-hand side, it is I have long been after a slow motion capture of flowers blooming. And Sanjay, our magician, design head, he found this gorgeous video that someone put together painstakingly over 2.5 years or something, of lots and lots of flowers blooming, and it has been painstakingly stitched together. So these are actual videos of flowers blooming of various sorts, and that we have captured. And the video itself is a 4-minute long video, which we have slowed down for the duration of my talk. So, so it's a slow down of a speed up of actual flowers blooming. And the screen itself is amazing. This is a 120-foot wide screen with full of LEDs, and we were thinking about ways of, there is a beautiful picture of confluence of rivers over there, again keeping with the confluence. I know there are many of you who routinely conjecture about what is going on with Vishal's slides, and so this is what's going on. Anyway, back to the Renew. So in all our service lines, in all our work, in all our software, Ravi, who is here, he has been pushing this agenda, this dual agenda of automation and innovation. So automation is straightforward. We want to automate as much as possible everything that we do. So over the last year, we just finished our financial year. In the past year, we did more than 11,500 people that we saved as a result of automation. So if you look at our performance, we grew by 8.3% in constant currency over the last year. But the number of people that we grew in the company was something like, we added 6,000 people in the company compared to 17,000 people the year before. So which means we, even though our revenue grew by 8.3%. So this is a great example of how our own implementation of automation in our work has led to a significant improvement in productivity for us, and obviously also for you. So we want to do much more of that. And that automation is about bringing in tooling. IDP that I have written here is the Infosys Developers Platform. This is our own collection. We have 150,000 software engineers. This is our own collection of experiences around the best practices in software development that we are collecting into the IDP, and 30 of you are trying this with us right now. I would love over the course of this year to bring this to every one of our engagements with all of you. And of course, our NIA platform for IT, we have now more than 150 engagements of this across 50 clients, and this is at the heart of automating the work that we have done, the work that we have been doing for a long time, whether it is maintenance or run operations, business process management, verification, any of these kinds of services. But that automation is not only about automation. The duality of automation is innovation. And innovation in the services means innovation at the grassroots. And one of the things that I am the most proud of the last 3 years is the work that we have done in something that we call zero distance. And zero distance is a very simple idea of bringing innovation to every single project that we engage in. And I'm really proud. We actually we have more than 95% coverage, meaning in more than 95% of our projects, there is some zero distance idea or the other. And in fact, we reached this 95% coverage within a year of launching zero distance. We just finished 2 years of it. So it has become a cultural movement, a basically accepted way of working within Infosys, that in every project we don't just do what we are told, we think of something innovative. And we have thousands of these. The 15,000 that I have here refers to the 15,000 ideas that the teams have come up with across the 9,500 master projects that are going on in the company. And the 2,000 that I refer to here is the 2,000 implementations that we have already done in your landscapes. And so what Ravi has been doing over the last year, since we already achieved that level of coverage, is to take it beyond that and go into really deeply understanding the health of projects in a very decentralized way. The CWRF, in case you are wondering, Martin Luther King had this wonderful quote. He used to say that if you cannot fly, you must run. If you cannot run, you must walk. If you cannot walk, you must crawl. But whatever you do, keep making progress. So that is crawl, walk, run, fly. And that is a metaphor for the kind of improvement that we want in the projects. We want everyone to at least crawl, and we want many of them to walk and run, and we want some of them to fly. We want progress in every single engagement that we have with you. And Zero Bench is the mechanism that fuels that. Zero Bench is our AWS. Zero Bench is our Uber. We have at any given point in time, even with 83% utilization, we have 8,500 people who are on the bench. And coming from a product company, I always found that concept to be amazing, that we have 9,000 people, 8,000 people on the bench. So we implemented this marketplace within the company to bring people who are on the bench to do something interesting. And again, within less than a year, people came up with ideas to keep more than the entire bench occupied. Now that number of ideas has gone to 6 times the size of the bench. We have 40,000 projects that people want to accomplish with these 8,000 people on the bench. And as a result of all of this, the utilization of the youngsters, one of the interesting ironies in services companies is that the youngsters are usually the ones who are on the bench. And because, they are on the bench because they don't have experience, and they don't have experience because they are on the bench. So this has become a great mechanism for us to break that vicious cycle and get them out of there. So this is, our own renewal has been powered by this combination of automation and innovation. And these are 2 examples of that. And many of you have recognized this. This is a quote from Nelson Hall, who looked at our renewal in detail and wrote a wonderful report about that. And the new is, of course, things that we did not do before. So if I look at the last 2.5, 3 years, we have launched something like 25 new services that we did not have before. They are in 9 categories. And over the course of these 2 days, please go and make yourself familiar with these. Many of you are already working with us on these. These are areas that are new to us, that are new to you, that are growing dramatically, where there is a tremendous need, whether it is modernizing the existing infrastructure, legacy infrastructure, mainframe infrastructure. Sandeep mentioned HPE. We have a tremendous partnership with HP Enterprise on mainframe modernization to the cloud, to the private cloud, and so forth. Also with AWS and Microsoft and others. At the AWS event last year, we did a wake for many of these mainframes. Some of these mainframes are 50 years old, and I know they are amazing machines, but after 50 years, it is time to put these machines out of their misery. One of the great insurance companies had a system, one of their critical systems running on a mainframe from the 1960s, from before I was born. And I told the head of operations is a friend of mine, and I told him, it's time for this to go, man, come on. So I know it is not easy, and these are incredibly complex and important systems, but really by liberating them, we can achieve a massive savings and improvement in experience and so forth. And the cloud ecosystem, cloud infrastructure for new things, cloud applications for new areas, especially for digital areas, the work that we have done in Digital Factory and the Internet of Things, all the stuff that you see outside, working together with software vendors in bringing their software into our services. Many examples like this, of course from the SAP and Oracle, Microsoft, and many other software vendors, but also new ones like ServiceNow and similar products that we are bundling together with our services to create an integrated experience. So these 25 services in 9 categories, if you see Ravi walking around, please stop him and ask him about this. I'm really excited about this. And of course, new software. The productivity improvement in our own work has to come from new software. So you have all heard about the software work that we have done with Nias, Kava, and Edge and Panaya, and more is on the way. One of the things that I'm very excited to announce is Parvinder, who is sitting right here, Parvinder Johar, the new head of all of our software work. So all the software work we have, all the new software work we have bundled together into one organization that Parvinder is now responsible for. And the work in the strategic design consulting that we have done with many of you. We have done now around 50 engagements of strategic design consulting, where we work together to identify the true future areas of your business, and that is something that I'm really excited about. In terms of the new ecosystems that we have been building, I have periodically been updating you on this. Today we are, Sandeep already talked about HP Enterprise. Meg is going to be here talking about the work that we are doing together. And we have done some really exciting work with our friends at Adobe in rethinking digital experiences. And in fact, let me call on stage the CTO of Adobe, Abhay. Abhay, come on over.
Thanks, Vishal.
So, Abhay, when everybody talks about digital, and there is a tremendous fascination in our industry with digital, as if the software that we write is for anything other than digital computers. You know, many people, and Phil is here, and Phil has asked me, you know, Vishal, Phil, I'm talking about you, man. You know, why don't you talk more about digital? And I said, you know, because we stopped writing software for analog computers a long time ago. All the work that we do is for digital computers. But anyway, joking aside, when people think of digital, one of the first names that comes to mind is Adobe. And we have a tremendous partnership. So, Abhay, talk about what you are seeing, how you are approaching digital, and the work that we are doing together.
Okay, thanks, Vishal. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Great to be here to talk a little bit about partnership with Infosys and Adobe. I guess in terms of digital, as we kind of jointly, routinely talk to a lot of customers, first of all, the rate of change that's happening in digital technology, that's mostly driven by a lot of the trends that Vishal talked about this morning, is just simply accelerating the pace of change at a level that we haven't seen before. Whether it's new devices, new immersive media, the massive explosion in infrastructure in compute and data, the blurring of digital and physical worlds, it's actually opening experience frontiers like nothing we have seen before. Now, as consumers, we love that. But we as businesses are also actually struggling, and in many cases racing to stay ahead of these customer expectations. It was interesting to hear Vishal talk a little bit about the Moore's Law. I actually also have a background mostly in the hardware side of the world originally. But at Adobe these days, we actually talk about a little bit of a different kind of Moore's Law. We talk about Moore's Law of experience. And really what this is as consumers, we increasingly have expectations from brands that we do business with that the type of experience they deliver has to double in its quality and effectiveness with us as consumers every 12 to 18 months. So as a business, you have to really deal with these skyrocketing expectations of customer experience and rethink entirely how your business is wired in. Now at Adobe, as kind of the work we've been doing with Infosys over the years, as some of you may know, we went through our own business transformation and our own journey of kind of reinvention of the experience, where not only did we reinvent the business model for our company, but really go much more direct in dealing with consumers and our customers. And so part of that journey for us was to reimagine a modern platform for a modern experience business, a platform that's centered around marrying kind of art of content with science of data. It's interesting to hear the theme of Confluence for this event. We really think a lot about kind of confluence of amazing, compelling design with this blending of that with deep intelligence and data, and doing so at scale to deliver completely new experiences.
And in terms of our work together, Abhay, any thoughts on that, how we are bringing together the experience, the software from Adobe, the services from Infosys?
Yeah, I think, I mean, in many ways, and Vishal, Shantanu, our leadership team at Adobe, we talk a lot about, even though we are a software company, and as kind of Vishal said in his background, I'm a core product guy, but really as we talk to customers, the reality of this digital transformation, that the hardest part of this journey for customers is really not technology. Frankly, though we build technology, and we think technology is kind of the be-all, end-all in some ways, but it really isn't. And in many ways, what I see and talk to customers is the transformation they have to go on. They need a partner who can deal with the complexity of their existing systems, somebody who's going to redesign their entire business process from the era of back office and mainframes that you talked about to more of the front office customer experience. And last but not the least, the hardest challenge of all is to retool your employees, train them, kind of drive them towards new skills and experiences. And so that organizational change is actually one that we hear about. So for us at Adobe, we realized a while back that even though we can build amazing products, we cannot do it all, especially as companies look to partners who guide them on this journey. So for us, the Infosys partnership has been phenomenal so far, but especially as we look ahead, it's going to probably be even more crucial in our core DNA and strategy as we go forward.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Abhay. It's wonderful to work together with Adobe. And
thanks, Vishal. Great to be here.
So working together with Adobe, one of the amazing skills that we have at Infosys is the ability to teach at a massive scale. And one of the things that it has been a lot of fun working with Shantanu and Abhay and Todd and Brad and the team is really bringing a massive education on not only the individual products, but also the entire digitization experience of the customer experience to a large scale. Last year at Confluence, I announced Mana, our AI platform. Over the last year, we brought the AI technology to IT. And as I mentioned earlier, the 50 plus engagements and 150 plus scenarios that we have implemented on those 50 plus engagements. And as we brought that to life, we realized that even though the original purpose that we had designed the platform and the tooling for was around simplifying IT, automating parts of IT, maintenance, operations, and so forth, that really the business applications, the breakthrough business applications was a huge opportunity. So I'm really excited. Last month, we announced Nia, our AI platform that brings together all the work that we were doing before, as well as many new capabilities, the script writing and tooling from this so-called robotic process automation area, new forms of going deeper into the process with OCR and voice technologies, many of the rule technologies for capturing scripts and things like that. We made a small acquisition of the technology of Skytree, a company that has tremendous expertise in machine learning. And all of these capabilities are now a part of the Nia platform, and I strongly encourage you to take a look at this during your 2 days here. Sandeep wanted me to plug the 333 for Nia. 3 months, 3 scenarios live, and the third 3 is something. Sandeep can tell you what the third 3 is. I think it costs you $300 million or $3 billion. Here is a quote from Phil. I mentioned Phil earlier on Nia. And many of you know about our Panaya software for simplifying the upgrades, testing the upgrades for complex enterprise landscapes. And one of the things that the Panaya team is really proud of announcing today is the product RDX. We are bringing Panaya now to the cloud services, to cloud applications, so starting with Salesforce.com with our friends at Salesforce. And it expands the notion of Panaya as an amplifier for testing and automating the upgrade process to one that is not just limited to when the upgrades happen, but a continuous evolution. In the world of cloud, things are connected. Business users are connected directly to the cloud systems. So we have a continuous testing enabled by business users. So it is a two-dimensional evolution of the Panaya products towards, on the one hand, bringing them to business users who use cloud services, and on the other hand, to a continuous usage across the life cycle of the cloud service. So really excited about that. Please take a look at that. And from our Edge team, one of the things that I'm really proud of, the EdgeVerve framework with this weird name that I will not even bother pronouncing. Parvinder, what is oecloud.io? This used to be called the EVF, the Edge Word Framework. What is wrong with the Edge Word Framework? Jonathan, are you here somewhere? It's open enterprise, I see. Well, that makes it much more meaningful. Because OE Cloud just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? oecloud.io, it's open enterprise. Okay, open enterprise makes a lot more sense. But what it is enterprise applications have long been things that are far worse in terms of user experience, in terms of the speed of deployment, the speed of change, the speed of integration, than the consumer applications and other things that we have been accustomed to. And one of the things that our Edge team, that Jonathan's team has been working on, is to really make it possible for developers to write enterprise applications, to modify enterprise applications dramatically more productively, dramatically more efficiently than was possible to do before. Their goal was to improve the productivity by 10 times. And so it is all based on open technologies, open source technologies, to dramatically improve the agility and the speed of teams writing enterprise applications. And it is something that is at the basis of all of our software that we write. It is also something that is the part of the IDP that I mentioned earlier, the Infosys Developers Platform. It is something that we are really proud of. So when you think about software-enabled legacy modernization or software-enabled application development and maintenance, this tooling, the OE Cloud tooling, is going to be something that we use to significantly improve the productivity of our developers. And in terms of our own cultural work, we have been working heavily on process simplification. Our finance team, Rangai is here, our CFO, our internal processes, dramatically improving the agility of our processes. But really, when we think about culture, the main element of culture is education. And I have always been proud of the Infosys culture of education and learning and learnability, the value of learnability that comes from our founders. But it is also important to improve how we learn. So these 4 things that I have written here, the Infosys Learning Platform, ILP, the digital tutor. Digital tutor is something that we have enabled at Infosys, where anyone at Infosys can create a small class or a small lesson on something, on whatever it is that they happen to be really good at or they feel like sharing with others. And we have tens of thousands of videos and these video tutorials on the digital tutor now in the last 1 year since we launched it. ILP is our own learning platform. And one of the things that we talk about collaboration, and teams that collaborate become exponentially more powerful than individuals. So we exercised this idea recently with a very simple experiment in our classrooms. We reorganized the classrooms so that 4 people can sit together and work together on a problem. And we saw some astonishing results. On any given day, typically in our classrooms, most classrooms have 100 people, some have 200 people. So on a typical day, you might be by yourself doing the exercises, or you might be in a team of 2 or in a team of 4. And what happens is, when you are in a team of 4 and you do an exercise, some amazing things happen. In programming, for example, you never make syntax errors because somebody else is watching. One of the other 3 will catch a syntax error. The syntax error rate drops to close to 0% from 71% if you are an individual. The code is much more readable. It is much more concise. It is a mechanism for us. We can always say there is a corporate value of collaboration and thou shalt collaborate and so forth. But when you sit together as a team of 4 and you realize that no matter how smart you are by yourself, when you are sitting together in a team of 4, you are much more powerful. It ingrains in you the value of sharing, of working together. And little experiments like this that we have tried, we have an amazing new idea of a flight simulator, of bringing augmented reality and virtual reality experience into the classroom so that we can have a teacher sitting far away and still have an immersive experience in the classroom. These kinds of things have been quite extraordinary. We did, together with Stanford University's Business School, we did a global leadership program, the first of its kind for a company headquartered in India. And the first 200 of our senior executives have gone through this. And many of them who have been at Infosys for more than 20 years have told me that this is the best experience that they have had in the last 20 years at Infosys. As you know, the governor of Indiana is going to be here later today, Eric Holcomb. And we have announced the plan to hire 10,000 people locally in the US over the next 2 years, starting with a couple thousand in Indiana. And an integral part of that hiring is on-site learning, it is training. And Sebastian from Udacity is going to be here tomorrow. We are going to create not only our own training centers, but also work together with a ecosystem of partners to make sure that the people that come in to the workforce have the right skills for the times. So that skill development is something that is fundamental to the cultural transformation. So this is a straightforward idea for how the dramatic advances in the times around us can lead to a strategy for all of us. And I have given you an update on my own execution along the strategy, but it is something that I believe is universal. It applies to all of us. And the last section that I want to cover is, what does this mean for all of us? What can this tangibly mean for us? And I think in a nutshell, what it can tangibly mean for us is to be more. You see this phrase outside, it can help us be more. It can help us be more connected to what is going on, to be more aware of what is going on, to be more responsive to what is going on. One of our endeavors, one of our programs, and Sandeep started this, is a 100x program to take a process, whatever process, some value chain, and make it 100 times more efficient, more responsive, more connected. When we look at companies today with the value chains largely in the physical world, and we compare them to the best value chains that we have seen, and we see that easily there is a 100x improvement that is possible. 100x more connectivity, 100x cheaper, 100x more aware and responsive. 100x, it is possible. One great example from the CPG world is Kraft Heinz, and here is a quote from Francisco. CPG companies typically don't work directly with consumers, but you saw the example of Farm Drop, and it is necessary now to coexist with the world of retail together with a direct engagement with consumers. And here is an example of Kraft Heinz going 100x better by using our services and our Scala platform to connect directly and incredibly efficiently and quickly directly to consumers. So if you have been thinking about a way to do that, here is an amazing example of that. Being more means more automated. We have to seriously examine the parts of our landscape that are relevant for the future. And those that are not relevant have to be thrown out before somebody else forces us to. Those that are relevant have to be automated as much as possible. We have to be more automated. We have to be more optimized, more productive in what we are doing. You have to identify the productivity threshold that keeps you ahead of the declining price curve that applies to our traditional business. 10 years ago, when the iPhone came out, there used to be this saying that there must be an app for that. One of the things that we have put in place inside our own services organization, that Ravi has put in place, is there must be a tool for that. To create a culture where we not only do a job that we are supposed to do, but to the extent possible, we write a tool to do the job that we are doing. That switch, that evolution, that the parts of my work that are mechanizable, I will write a tool for, no matter what that tool is something absolutely crucial. Sebastian, I met Sebastian yesterday, the founder of Udacity, and he'll be here tomorrow morning. And he talked about how one of his engineers looked over the shoulder of the salespeople in the company and actually wrote a tool to figure out, using neural networks, what conversations led to conversions and what did not. And he wrote a tool for that. And he said that his conversions improved by 60% or something like this. You can ask him tomorrow. An extraordinary example of there must be a tool for that. NIA for operations, NIA for IT, is one of these extraordinary tools for that. And there is a full spectrum where we can apply this. There is a term these days, robotic process automation. I'm not such a fan of this term, but be that as it may. There's nothing really robotic about it. It is a bunch of scripts, frankly, similar to Excel macros and so forth. The idea is that you take an existing landscape, an existing process, and keep the systems, the applications the same, and you simplify the work that people do around them, the service agents and so forth, by using robotic process automation to create little scripts that execute those activities automatically. And the scripts have to be somewhat intelligent so that if the underlying application changes or the process changes, that they don't break, you have a good way to transfer them and so forth. So we have had a tool for that called Assist Edge, and that is now a part of the NIA family that does that. And you can go up the chain of transformational intelligence from there, capturing standard operating procedures into more complex rule-based scripts and procedures, to understanding large amounts of data with machine learning, taking complex decisions, doing complex analytics, voice-based interfaces and so forth. And finally, to understanding complex areas of business like compliance to regulatory policies and things like that, and bringing the power of AI into that. And there are some amazing applications that we can put together in those areas. For example, we worked with a large logistics company in automating the regulatory documents that they had for HR, and simplifying those dramatically. People cannot hold hundreds of regulations in their head at the same time. Our brains are simply not capable of doing that. And we did this amazing project with this company to understand that regulatory infrastructure into NIA, and then make it possible for the managers to figure out, in a unionized, regulated work environment, what the obligations are when people go on jury duty or overtime pay and things like that. So there are some amazing applications that are possible of NIA and of AI in general to help us become more automated, more productive, more optimized. And here is a quote from Cheryl, the CIO of AD, and she's here, around the work that they have done with us and the results that they have seen. All of this can help us become more innovative. People ask me often about the impact of AI and what that means for us. With the rapid advances that we see in AI, I think it is safe to say that anything repeatable, anything that can be mechanically articulated, that can be precisely articulated, is going to be done automatically. In our lifetimes, for sure, we will see AI technology evolve to the point that anything that we can precisely describe, that we can precisely articulate, will be possible to do automatically. So the question on the minds of lots of people these days is, what happens to us? What do we do? This is the question underneath the big skills debate of our times. This is the question that is underneath what is going on in the US, what is going on in the many geopolitical discussions around us, Brexit, and in India, this is a big question around the future of the youth. There is a huge amount of unemployment among engineering undergraduates in India. Large pockets of populations are isolated from society in many parts of the world. The way I see this AI, it scares us because it is about our brains, about our mental abilities, not only about amplifying our physical abilities. We would not think of competing with a truck. We would not think of competing with a train or an airplane. We would not want to fly or travel as fast as an airplane can with our legs. It just sounds absurd. And yet we are offended when the world's best Go player loses to a computer. I think it is because somehow this time around it is not only about our manual abilities, but about our brains that it offends us. But in reality, it is no less an amplification of our abilities than the robot that throws a car into a vat of paint and brings it back out within 3 seconds, something that even 40 people put together cannot do. So the great amplifying of our ability because of AI, the unlimiting of our ability because of AI is what it is all about. The automation, the AI can help us become more innovative. If problem solving is going to be done by machines, then problem finding is the human frontier. This is the basis on which we steer Infosys. I believe this is the answer to the skills question in general, that we must all become more innovative. We must all deploy the automation technology to amplify our ability so that we may focus on that which makes us more creative, to exercise our creativity, to exercise our ability to innovate. And that innovation in our organizations needs to have no bounds. It can be grassroots innovation done by everyone. Zero distance is a great example of that. Or it can be breakthrough innovation that we engage in. Design thinking and great new applications of AI. Abhay talked about some of those that Adobe has been working on. By using design thinking to identify important problems and then implementing those problems that we find, great applications for those problems, is what each one of us can do. We can work with you on this, exercising design thinking to identify some of the most extraordinary applications. We had this experience with a bank recently where they had a team of lawyers that would read NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and identify exceptions in NDAs in some cases and then check to see if the exceptions are okay to accept or not. And they asked us to implement that with NIA, and we did that, and it works with close to 100% accuracy. We learn from a whole bunch of example NDAs, and then automatically NIA can detect where the exceptions are and whether the exceptions are okay to accept or not. And it frees a few lawyers from doing that work, junior lawyers. So this is not IT administrators, file system administrators, or people operating a business process sitting in a call center. This is lawyers. And I recently asked our team who met the customer, and the CEO is a friend of mine, said, what happened to those lawyers? He said, they are doing more interesting things. So I had fully expected that they got laid off or something, but actually they moved on to more productive, higher value work. And obviously there was enough of that. So I think that the duality of bringing automation to do the work that we already know about and use that to become more innovative is what is at the heart of what we must do. And that can apply to the grassroots, and that can apply to the breakthroughs, the pink plane and the blue plane. Here is an amazing example of a project that we did with one of the top business schools in China. The more details of this are outside if you are interested. This is the Fudan School in Shanghai, where we did a 3-month-long strategic design consulting exercise to imagine what Fudan would look like 10 years from now. And the dean himself was the sponsor of this work, and it was a really amazing piece of work. And there is no reason why all of us cannot do something similar. Being more can be about being more agile, more decentralized, more entrepreneurial. Zero distance is about innovation at the grassroots, but it is also about us as a company becoming more agile, more democratized. If you look at the Fortune 500 over the last 10 years, something like 35% of the Fortune 500 have gone away, are not there in the Fortune 500 anymore. And the top 5 companies in the world by market cap, their market cap has grown by 6 times in the last 10 years. These are all technology companies. And of course, you ask yourself, why isn't everyone a technology company? And typically, large companies ask this question of why are we not innovating? Why aren't big companies innovative? And then we hire consultants, and then the consultants come and tell us that the middle management is broken. And it is always the middle management that is broken. And we pay millions of dollars to consultants to tell us that the middle management is broken. And it's not the middle management. It is the fact that there are large parts of the organization that are not in contact with the outside world. Smaller, agile companies are in contact with the outside world. But when you think about this, you realize that it is possible for big companies to also be in contact with the outside world. And zero distance, the reason zero distance is called zero distance is because we want our people, every one of our people, as much as possible, to be in contact with the outside world, whether it is with the end users, the desirability, whether it is with the software, the feasibility, or the sale, the economics, the value, the viability. So in being in zero distance, being a zero distance enterprise is about being in contact with the outside as much as possible, increasing the surface area of the organization. Any long-lived organism or organization has this attribute that maximum amount of that organization is in outside contact. And finally, here is by the way, one of the interesting things about zero distance that has happened is that many of you who have experienced zero distance in the teams that work with you have actually come to us and asked us to implement zero distance within your own organizations. And many have seen the results of zero distance. Here is a great example from Aon, from Aon Affinity, of how zero distance impacted the work that we do with them. And finally, being more ultimately is about being more educated. My wife Vandana runs the Infosys Foundation in the US, and they have an event going on here, Crossroads, I think upstairs or downstairs, but in the same building. And last year she did a speech where she found this amazing statistic that in the dark ages, 6% of the world's population knew how to read and write. When the dark ages were going into the middle ages, 6% of the world knew how to read and write. The literacy rate was 6%. Now it is 83% or something like this. But when you think about the computer as the new literacy, authoring, programming a computer as the new literacy, 0.5% of the world's population knows how to program a computer, 0.5%. And that is if you are being generous. If you count Excel macros and the robotic process automation scripts, actually true programming is something like 0.25% or something like this. IDC has the number on this. So in that sense, we are still living in the dark ages of the computer age. And when you think about the tech companies, and Infosys in many ways is a tech company, how many of the employees know the technologies, the skills that determine our future? What is our coverage of that? We have to ask ourselves this question honestly. How many of it doesn't mean that every one of us has to become a geek or something like this, but how many of us are aware of the skills and the technologies that define our future? What is our coverage of that? What is our breadth of that? By breadth, I mean how many of those technologies do we know? And by depth, I mean how well do we know them? How many of our people have exercised for more than 10,000 hours those skills. You know, there is a study that 10,000 hours of deliberate practice makes us a world-class expert in something. It's not just 10,000 hours of doing something, but 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. So we have to ask ourselves this question. And one of the things I'm really proud of our HR team is that we have done that inside Infosys. The coverage, the breadth, the depth. We know the people who have been at zero distance for more than 10,000 hours, and we know the ones out of those that have excelled. There are only 875 people out of our 200,000 Infosians who have been in outside contact for more than 10,000 hours and have had the highest level of performance throughout those 10,000 hours. And there are 1,900 who have that high performance for 70% of the time and 10,000 hours and so on. We have a 5,000 hour group and so on. We have to ask this question. Every time I see a client, a management team or a board that I present to, I ask this, that how many of the workforce have the skills that are necessary for the future? And that means an emphasis on learning, on education, not only on learning, but also on new ways of learning. And here is a quote from Sebastian. I mentioned him already now 3 times. And Udacity, of course, the work that we are doing with Nano Degrees and Udacity, with Coursera, with edX, with Pluralsight, with companies like this that are rethinking education itself, is at the heart of this. And in the end, all of this is about coming back to who we are. My view is that far from being a technology that makes us obsolete, the technologies of our time, if we do them right, are going to help us become more of who we are, be more true to who we are. Last year I showed those of you who were here last year at Confluence, I showed a digital farm that we built in our office in Palo Alto. A small one, one of the CEOs of an agriculture company challenged me that if we digitally connected a plant, we would be able to dramatically improve the agricultural yield. He had predicted 30%. When we built that farm, we found that some of the plants, because you could water them 1,000 times in a day, you could water them by milliliters. You could give them nutrients 100 times in a day if you wanted to. You could control the light, the pH balance, everything automatically as well as with human intervention, and you could do that remotely. I'm really proud that in the last 1 year, we actually built such a farm at a larger scale in our Hyderabad campus. And now we have 2 clients, Sakata and Olam in Singapore, who have actually implemented that farm. And we are doing a lot of work with them in this area. And Rajesh is here. He can talk to you about this in more detail. And a great example of an incubation that we started, an idea, and actually that has since been implemented. Farming, you know. When I was growing up, the Green Revolution was a great metaphor, a great example of human amplification, of how farming in India grew dramatically within our lifetimes. To make India self-sustained in food and so forth. And it is very exciting to see the farming itself as something that is going through such a revolutionary change. And the kids that you see over there, these are 2 kids from Carnegie Mellon. This is Shunji on the right and Anand on the left. They made these shoes, these electrical shoes. The foundation in the US created an InfiMakers program to inspire a sense of making among kids, and these were one of the winners of the first InfiMakers contest. They got $10,000 or something, and they made these shoes. And what do the shoes do? They make you walk twice as fast. They lower the burden on climbing stairs, on going up the hill. It's an amazing example. We were talking about the bicycle earlier. It's an amazing example of amplifying our ability. They have AI in it. They use balancing technology and things like that, so that if you drop in the wrong way or your foot goes into a pothole or something, they have ways to react to it and so on. So this AI built inside the shoe. It's an extraordinary example. Later this fall, they are going to release this shoe, the first commercially available version of this. It's an amazing example of how how kids can do something extraordinary in the times that we are living in. So the more I think about the times that we are in, the technology all around us, yes, we work for organizations, but we are individuals. And just like these kids from Carnegie Mellon who built this amazing shoe just powered by their imagination and some technology, it is possible for every one of us to take advantage of the automation, to unleash our innovation, and to do something amazing. Thomas Edison once said that, actually I think the quote was, if we did half of what it was possible for us to do, we would astound ourselves. When I think about Confluence and Unlimit, when I think about AI, when I think about the digital times that we are living in, and the fact that people talk about the pace of change, and I had this memorable thing that somebody said, that the pace of change is the fastest that it has ever been and the slowest that it is going to be. The thing that comes to my mind is that if we really put our minds to it, if we really put our imagination to it, all of this in the end means that we can be more of who we are, that we can really unlimit ourselves, and we can really do things that will astound ourselves. Thank you very much. Questions? Questions? Do we have time for some questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions will be great.
Wow, we actually finished with time for questions.
There are people with mics running around, so please raise your hand if you have a question.
Any questions?
Vishal, as people think of questions, every year the pace of change is intimidating, but you come in and drive some sense into that world. The 2 or 3 larger principles, end user connectedness and user centricity, Moore's law, remain constant, but the examples keep becoming more and more astonishing. Where will this end? I mean, next year, I mean, where will this go?
The limit is our imagination. I don't see an end to that for the foreseeable future. Just as we continue to make discoveries in the large and in the small, I think that is going to continue to happen. People often ask, is this it? Is this where it stops? In Silicon Valley, there was a long debate about Moore's law ending, and now we know for sure that there will be new architectures and new designs that will keep this going well beyond 2025. So just as there is no largest number in the universe, just as we haven't found the smallest particle, and we for sure haven't found the largest thing in the universe, I don't think there is a limit to where this stops.
Amazing. Thank you. Are there questions?
We are out of time?
I think there's a question right there on the back left.
Yeah.
Vishal, thank you very much for a very inspiring, not technologically oriented, talk. I don't want to call it a lecture. My company is a very service-oriented company, and we use a lot of Infosys services. But we're now getting into the space of AI and machine learning. And what we're seeing is most of our customers are really not exactly ready for AI. They have this fear of eliminating jobs, maybe kind of automating things that people are comfortable with. So what would be your guidance for companies like us that are working with Infosys to kind of bring education maybe, and also marketing material to companies like the ones that we call customers?
I think the most important place to start is to identify some great, valuable problems, things that matter, things that you want to bring this technology to bear on, something that has been bothering you, something that is of deep relevance, strategic importance that moves the needle on something that matters to the company. Identify 3 or 4 problems like that and bring technology to bear, bring AI to bear on that. And the skills, the people, they all form around the real problem. Identifying the real problem is the most important thing. And our team, we can help you with that, with design thinking, or you can do this by yourselves. But my sense is that when there is John McCarthy, the father of artificial intelligence, used to say that articulating a problem is half the solution. So once you have sat together with a few diverse perspective people in a room for half a day and identified 4 or 5 important problems to go after that prove that entry into the new area, everything follows from there.
Excellent. Thank you, Vishal. Any more questions? Yep. The gentleman here right up front. Someone, there you go.
Hi Vishal, hi Sandeep. My name is Prem Shankar. I'm from McKesson Corporation. How are you unlimiting the middle management? As you move forward with providing empowerment and autonomy, and as your organization has grown beyond 200,000 Infosians, what are you doing to empower and make them have the autonomy they deserve to unlimit themselves?
So, it's a wonderful question. Ravi has a project that he has been working on for the last year called the Next Generation Delivery Construct, where we bring them to the front lines. We bring the managers who have traditionally grown to be in a span of control kind of a mindset to come to the front lines and spend as much time with clients as possible. So he took 200 of our senior managers and turned them into client partners who work together with the field organization in bringing the power of delivery to the outside. And similarly, so we took 5 layers that we had in between and transformed them into 2 layers without losing anybody by flattening the organization, making it more flat on the bottom and on the top and having more outside contact. And to do that, then we have to enable the people, give them the right skills, give them the right access. So the Stanford GLP that I talked about and things like that have been a mechanism to enable that. And similarly, having them be more aware of what is going on, making sure that the incentive structure is aligned to that. All of these are things that have to be done. There is a large white goods manufacturer in China called Haier, the Haier Group, and they have done some pioneering work in what they call a reverse pyramid. So when we did this work in flattening our own organization, we found that the management, instead of being more about command and control, has to be more about enabling and flow of decisions, flow of information, unrestricting things, unlimiting things, rather than about telling people what to do. Because in today's time, with the speed at which things move, to assume that a leader knows more about an entire organization is completely absurd. To assume that the CEO sitting at the top of the organization is somehow the smartest and the most aware and knows more than what 199,000 other people do, it's completely absurd. You have to be the managers, the leaders have to be enablers, have to be creators of the flow, creators of the decisions and smoothing of things, and the people who are at the front lines have to be the decision makers. And this, we have to do this in order to be relevant in these times.
Thank you, Vishal. One more question?
Hey Vishal, very inspiring keynote. Quick question for you. You talked about NIA for IT ops and also for lawyers. Are you seeing any uptake in marketing for something like this, where AI and automation are changing the game?
In the marketing, yes, Abhay talked about this. In fact, the Adobe Sensei product is precisely about bringing the power of AI and intelligence to marketing. We do a lot of work in this area in understanding customer behavior, a deep sense of connectedness with the customer. So if you look at the modern digital devices, we know what is going on with these devices in real time, what people are doing with them. We know, I mentioned the example of the car, and now we know what is going on with the car in real time. But if you think about this bottle of water, we don't know what is going on with this bottle of water in real time. This particular vendor whose bottle of water this was does not know that Vishal had this on stage for 60 minutes and now he has finished it, and how long it took him to finish this and so forth. But there is no reason why, when it becomes economically viable to do this, you can put sensors inside the bottle and actually figure that out. So connectedness, computing, and disintermediation means that all of marketing can be redesigned around what is going on in real time. And we can do this today, in our case with NIA, but really with our imagination.
Thank you.
I think
Thank you
we are
very
out
much,
of
Vishal.
time. So
Thank you
thank
so
you
much.
very much and wish you a wonderful Confluence.